Hello and welcome to another episode of the Unwanted Opinions podcast. Jay and I are back recording Monday night about 7 p.m. Eastern time, Monday before Super Bowl 55, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. This has been a pretty quiet lead up to the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
It has. I would agree to that. So Jay and I are going to briefly touch on that. If you are a known listener to the Unwanted Opinions podcast, you know that this Super Bowl basically is canceled in Jay and I's households this year because of who's participating in it. But we can't skip at least previewing the Super Bowl and picking our winners. So we'll swallow our pride and just move on with that. Matthew Stafford just got traded to the Rams.
Just know that Tom Brady's the reason that we did not have a podcast last week, because I don't think either of us could stomach coming on here and talking about how we made it to another one.
No, I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't. I probably would have vomited all over the screen.
Yeah. So for your guys' sake, we decided to skip last week.
Yeah, because it probably wouldn't have been a very eventful. We would probably spend the whole half hour bashing him.
It'd have been pretty lopsided on what we were talking about.
Yeah, because like I said, if you were a known listener, I would say Jay and I are pretty good at being fair when it comes to anything except for Tom Brady. But
I will agree with that.
Yeah. So Mathew Stafford just got traded to the Rams, so we'll talk about that, what that means for the Rams, really kind of the future. Deshaun Watson officially demanded a trade. It was speculation up until about a couple days ago, I believe it was, and then he officially said he traded. So we got some thoughts on that, maybe where he's going to land. So we'll talk about that. Then we're going to go into some NBA stuff. I got a list of Bradley Beal trades that I'm going to run by Jay and see what he thinks. I did those. I made some today that I just want to know what you think about those. So, and then we'll just talk about some other teams, some things that we like and don't like so far in this NBA season. But as always, you can subscribe to the Unwanted Opinions podcast wherever you get your podcast: Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Unwanted Opinions with Nick and Jay. Hit us up on our email, unwantedopinionspodcast@gmail.com. Many ways to get in touch with us, ask us questions, comments, whatever. We're here for you.
Yeah,
Jay. So let's start with the Mathew Stafford trade, because that was it was very big news yesterday when that broke. Or it was Saturday that it broke. And you and I were texting about it a bunch. We actually were just it was so weird because we were literally texting about how much we wanted the Colts to go after and get him. And we were thinking, we know Ballard knows that they're basically a quarterback away from really, really, truly competing with all the other good teams, especially in the AFC. And he was a guy that everybody was invested in. It seemed like every day there was new stuff coming out about how many teams just wanted to get their hands on Mathew Stafford. And before we talk about what actually it means for the teams, I just want to say I'm really bummed that the Colts did not get him, but I'm actually legitimately happy for Mathew Stafford, because the Lions is just a terrible franchise to play for. I think it's been shown over the 50 years they've existed in the NFL. Their two biggest stars retired before they were 30. So I'm just happy that he got out of there and he's actually going to compete with a good team and a good franchise.
You and me both. And when it came out that he had said that he would play for basically anybody except the Patriots, that really elevated him on my likeness. And at that point, we both would really wish he would have come to Indy. I second what you said. I am so happy that he's finally going to be on a team that has some pieces around him that can win something. I'm so tired of the people sitting here saying, I heard it on multiple shows today, well, he's just not a winner. I'm tired. This is their argument. I'm tired of hearing it. He needs to win games before I'm just going to anoint him to go there and win games. I'm just like, listen, he hasn't had a running game the entire time he's been there. He's been there. What did he get there in 2009?
2009. Yeah.
Since then, he's had 11.
You have to do a team that was 0-16.
Exactly. And he's had 11 100-yard rushers in that entire career. Some people have that behind them in one season. It's taken him 11 or 12 years
11 games during
to get
their careers.
running back to rush for 100 times 100 yards 11 times. He's had the worst running game in the league on average since he's came in the league. He's had one top 10 defense the entire time. And do you know what their record was when he finally got a top 10 defense?
10-6 or 11-5.
11-5. And that was still with no run game and a bad offensive line. You take him, put him on the Rams, who have possibly the best defense in the NFL. If not, it's the top 5.
Statistically, they were the number 1 ranked defense this year. I mean, they have absolutely the best player in football on defense in Aaron Donald. They've got the best corner in Jalen Ramsey. So, yeah, keep going.
Then you add weapons. He has Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, a couple young tight ends, Cam Akers to hand the ball off to, franchise left tackle. I don't really agree with how they've built the Rams or who they're paying at this point. But this is a win for the Rams, and this is a win for Mathew Stafford because I think he just elevates them to Super Bowl contender day one.
I saw a lot of people saying that the Rams overpaid for Stafford. Do you think that's true? Because I don't.
No, I don't, because they don't have money to pay guys really anyways. They're getting Mathew Stafford for the next 2 years as like the 18th or 20th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. They dumped Jared Goff's horrific.
It's another thing you got to look at.
Horrific contract. And they had to give up a couple draft picks. The one thing that bothered me, like I said, this isn't me just going off saying that the Rams are just this excellent run franchise and they've done all these things correctly up to this point. I do think it makes them a Super Bowl contender, but they will go almost a decade without having a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, it's 8 straight years without a first-round pick. Jared Goff was actually their last first-round pick. But, I mean – you're getting a for sure thing with Mathew Stafford. You know what you're getting with Mathew Stafford. You don't every year know what you're getting out of a first-round pick. Now, I know that that's how you build your team and whatever. You build through the draft, and that's the right way to do things. But like you said, the Rams are just doing it differently. I mean, they're doing it through trades. They're doing it through big free agent signings. I mean, they're an LA team. Their owner is fucking loaded. He obviously doesn't care about paying these guys a ton of money because he's probably got one of the highest payrolls in all of football. I mean, he gave Aaron Donald the biggest contract, Jalen Ramsey. I mean, I know that they're not going to give Stafford immediately an extension, but I mean, that could be something that they work on down the road depending on the success that he has. But I mean, I don't think they overpaid just strictly for the fact if you think you're a quarterback away, then you go make that happen now.
Go
because
get that quarterback and win.
If they win the Super Bowl, not this year or next year, if they win even in the first 2 or 3 years of him being there, I mean, they've already won the trade because you win a Super Bowl. I mean, and that cures everything, and everybody will forget, oh, what they give up for him, 2 first-round picks? That doesn't matter. They won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They got to the highest peak.
And I can guarantee you the Lions aren't sniffing a Super Bowl in that time.
Hell no.
So,
and the Rams weren't going to – I think the Rams were probably going to be worse last year with Jared Goff because, I mean, they got by a lot of games despite Jared Goff. It's not like he went in there and won any games. It just reminds me of that night they played in Tampa and they ended up beating the Buccaneers. Jared Goff basically was trying to give the game away because he threw like 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter. I just didn't know what the fuck he was doing. And so
I believe, didn't they beat the Dolphins? And the Dolphins had like 8 total first downs.
The Dolphins kicked the shit out of the Rams this year.
But didn't they have like 8 total? That's what I'm saying. Didn't they have like 8 total first downs or something? It was strictly that Jared Goff just kept turning the ball over.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, they absolutely won this trade. I really don't think they gave up that much or too much for a guy who I think has just been stuck in a horrible situation. I mean, he's done everything he could. First of all, he's just tough as shit. I mean, you've seen the beatings this guy's taken over. His career is similar to Andrew Luck of that, where he didn't always have the most talent around him. His GM and his coaching and the franchise just basically did nothing to help this guy forever. I mean, he's uber talented. I mean, he's got one of the best arms in all of football. You put him on a team with, like you just mentioned, all the guys that they have on that roster for the Rams. I mean, this is a guy who, in the right situation, can succeed. I mean, it's the ultimate team sport, football is. And you have to have the quarterback to be able to win at the highest level. And with this Rams roster, as constructed as it is, with the coach that they have, this is something that makes them very scary in the NFC.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to see what Sean McVay can do with a quarterback talent like Matthew Stafford. And flip side, I'm excited to see what Matthew Stafford can do with an offensive mind like Sean McVay. Flip it to the other side. What is your thoughts on the Lions? I don't think it's that bad. I think it's kind of a win-win for both. Stafford wanted out. The Lions.
Can they flip Jared Goff's contract?
I don't know, but they had the salary to absorb.
I know they did.
And now they got more draft picks to build for the future. They're clearly in a rebuild. They just got a brand new coach. So I don't know.
Okay, the thing is, do they just flat out cut Jared Goff then? Because obviously he's not as bad. I mean, they're probably not going to win a lot of games. But do you want to be stuck with Jared Goff for the next 4 years as your quarterback when you want to try and bring in the next guy to become your franchise level quarterback for 15, 20 years? Jared Goff, you know what he is right now, and you clearly don't have the talent to win around him. So what do you do with Jared Goff? Is the only thing.
I'm not ready to answer that just yet because just 2 years ago, Goff was in the Super Bowl. I think people are talking about him like he is just a bottom 5 quarterback in the league, which he's not.
No, and like I said,
better than average.
Though.
Yeah, he's no better than average in the league. But maybe if Detroit gets the right guys in place, they can work on something. So I wouldn't cut him. I definitely wouldn't cut him after, you just brought him over. You might try and flip him. Doubt you can with that contract. There's not a lot of suitors for him, I wouldn't think. I saw a report that the Lions wanted Goff included in the trade. So maybe
I saw that too. That was one of the main reasons why they took the Rams deal, because I saw reported that the Panthers were willing to give up the number 8 pick. The Jets weren't willing to give up 2, but they had conversations. The Colts hadn't officially offered the 21 pick, but there was other things offered in that deal. So there were teams that were, there was a lot of teams interested in Matthew Stafford, but I saw that same thing too, where they were the one that they added that 3rd round pick. Ian Goff came into the deal. So the Rams were definitely the team that had the best offer.
So I'm just not ready to say the Lions just flat out lost this trade because, again, he was just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So he can clearly get you there. Now, he's one of those guys that needs the help around. He's not just carrying the Lions, but who knows?
No, and the Lions don't have the type of roster that can carry,
especially after their receivers are free agents this year. They're big 2 guys. So I don't know what the future holds over there, but I would definitely roll with him for now and see what he can do. And then, if he just flat out shits the bed this upcoming year, draft one next year, have him compete, see what happens, and then let him go.
I'll say it again, man. The Lions should have taken my advice.
Yeah, well,
year.
hindsight's always 20/20.
They were sitting as the 3rd pick and could have gotten Justin Herbert and could have still at least maybe they wouldn't have got 2 first-round picks from Matthew Stafford at the draft or before last year started, but they probably were going to at least get 1 and a 3 or a 1 and a 2, and then you have your franchise-level quarterback and you have 2 additional picks to help your quarterback. So, hey, man, that's my resume right there for the Lions GM job.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And that was a good call on your part, but there's a reason they're sitting there and we're sitting here. So unless we got better connections.
I have 0 connections.
It's all a moot point, but you did say that last year, and looking back.
And I don't hate it for the Lions because obviously they were stuck in just a rut. They don't have a talented enough roster to compete with even the Vikings or the Packers in the division, even the Bears. They're clearly the worst team in the division, even with Stafford. So, they just have to rebuild. They do, and they're obviously there. So,
and I need to look better into his contract, Jared Goff, that is, because I haven't looked down the road on what he's owed. I know he got like $100 million guaranteed, but I don't know how much of that was paid up front. Like, I know usually most contracts, the further down the line you get year after year, is less you are guaranteed, or you dead cap,
or you just pay them that, and then it doesn't go against your salary cap.
Yeah. So I didn't look into the end of his contract enough to know if maybe after the second year in Detroit they can cut him with not so much of a loss or dead cap. I'm not sure. That's something I need to look into, but I don't think it was.
Speaking of second years,
go ahead.
Did you know that they cut Todd Gurley after his second year into his big contract? They traded Brandon Cooks after his second year into that big contract, and they traded Jared Goff the second year into his big contract. So apparently the Rams just need to start handing out 2-year deals.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Or at least maybe 3-year deals, with the third year being the team-friendly option.
Partially guaranteed, or
yeah. Because they're not doing it right there. I mean, they're the most lopsided team I've ever seen.
But I mean, with all their cap problems this year, they still were one of the final 8 teams remaining in football. That's impressive.
Now you're basically going to keep that same roster and just flip Goff for Stafford. That could compete in the NFC. Easily. I mean, they could make it out of the NFC next year if Stafford has the full offseason to learn this system. And
for sure, but that was absolutely the biggest hole on their roster was quarterback.
No doubt.
I mean, I think they have some key free agents they need to resign. I don't know if they'll be able to keep all of them, but they also have a lot of rookies or young guys that'll step in and take their spot.
Yeah, and it's scary what they could do next year. The only problem I have with this is they're one big injury away from just tanking. If Aaron Donald goes down, that defense isn't the same, and they don't have the guys behind them to step up and fill his role. If Jalen Ramsey goes down, that secondary is not the same.
Yeah, but that's true for a lot of teams,
Kind of, but the other teams usually have their money spread out more because they have more depth. The Rams are paying like 6 guys, like $100 and something million, and I saw today that they have like $40 million to spend between 45 other players. That's not good.
That is.
So if you have one big injury, you have no depth behind.
Wow.
So
that's incredible. Actually, that's just amazing that that's real.
So
yeah.
If they can stay healthy, they'll be scary next year.
I think they'll be a good team. I really do. I think they'll be better than this year. But anyways, all right. Let's go to Deshaun Watson. So I actually saw today that Peter King reported that a couple veterans on the Texans team have told Deshaun Watson they don't want him to get stuck in Houston. So, I mean, even his own teammates.
J.J. Watt after the game
are trying to get him out of there.
After the game, when they were walking to the field, when J.J. Watt was like, "I'm sorry, I wasted one of your years.
Wasted a year of your career." Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think he'll ever play another snap for the Texans. I mean, you see it. The NBA is a little bit different where the stars, but you see once a guy is so unhappy in a situation, how toxic it just gets in the locker room, with that translating to the field. And I mean, your teammates know you don't want to be there, so why do they really care to play hard when you're on the field? And so, and honestly, it sounds kind of stupid, but the Texans' best bet might be trading Deshaun Watson and just rebuilding, because they're in another situation where we've said this 100 times. I mean, the cap problems they have, the lack of draft picks, the lack of talent they have on their roster. I mean, just the incompetence they had. I mean, now he doesn't like the ownership. I mean, it's just a bad situation in Houston. I mean, and so it really, I know you're going to lose one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football, but I mean, you just need a fresh start because your team sucks.
I mean, I can't really put it into better terms. They're not good. Will Fuller is a free agent. J.J. Watt, they're probably going to trade.
He's old too.
Justin Reed's one of their only good players on defense, and he plays a position that is very undervalued in today's NFL.
I don't understand how they have so much money invested and are so, I don't even know who is being paid all this money.
I think it's their dead cap. I haven't looked at it, but they probably owed DeAndre Hopkins money, and they traded him away. They probably owed – who else did they trade away?
There's no way they're still paying an Osweiler contract, are they?
I doubt that. I highly doubt that.
But I mean, they've got Laramie Tunsil's on a big deal. I
They
think
had, and that's
Watts
another
obviously spent a lot of
example.
money.
They screwed themselves. They brought this dude in. They gave up all this draft capital to bring this guy in who was on his last year of his deal. So you cannot let this guy walk after his first year. So he had all the leverage in the world and basically was like, yeah, you're going to make me the highest paid left tackle in the game. And there's nothing really you can say about it. And the ownership just said, like, okay, that's what we're going to do because we would look like an idiot if we let you walk after 1 year and we won and done in the playoffs. So they are in no – I agree with what you said. If it might be in their best interest to get rid of Deshaun Watson because at this point, I don't think you can salvage that relationship. Even with Deshaun Watson, you saw how not good they were last year, even though he was arguably the best quarterback in football last year. He had
like one of his best statistical seasons of his career, and they were 4-12.
There wasn't enough he could do, and that's the record they had. So, and you got a new coach, you got a new GM. Again, I think people do this too often. This rebuild. This team's in.
I do too. I think so too.
Rebuild mode. It's just, what else can they do? They do have the franchise quarterback, but they have no money, no draft ammunition to bring anything around them. So all you're going to
how much, even with Deshaun back and nothing to make yourself better, what at best, what are you going to go 8-8?
And you're in a pretty good division to be rebuilding, trying to get that next quarterback because right now the quarterback in Indy, that situation is unclear. The only quarterback under contract is Jacob Eason, who we've never seen throw a pass. You go down to Jacksonville, they got the number 1 pick for a reason. They're going to bring in Trevor Lawrence, and all signs point to Trevor Lawrence being great, but there's a high bust factor in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks. There's no guarantee that Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, there's just a risk that he's not that good until year 3 or 4. I mean, it's not like he's probably – I mean, I doubt that he probably comes in and has immediate success just because the Jaguars team, they also suck too. Exactly. I mean, they've got a lot of rebuilding to do. I mean, they basically trade away their best players once they get to the end of their contract.
And then you go to Tennessee, and their defense was atrocious last year. Their pass rush was one of the worst we've seen in the last decade. And then they have Ryan Tannehill, who's a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. So right now would be the time to try and right your ship and wholesale the team and try and start over. You got a brand new GM who's basically guaranteed to have a few years. So don't waste your time trying to mend this relationship with Deshaun Watson when you don't have anybody around him to win. Just get all you can for him because you're going to be able to get a ton for him and then try and build a new team.
Because I sent you the thing that apparently the Texans are asking for Deshaun Watson. They're asking for 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 young defensive starter level type players. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can offer that. I mean, you think about the quarterback market for teams. You got the 49ers are in the market. You got the Colts. I mean, I'm just at the Panthers, the Bears. Yeah, you just go down the list. I mean, the Patriots are another team. There's a lot of teams out there that are looking for quarterbacks. It's just going to be, I don't know if they'll work with Deshaun on where do you want to go. The Dolphins are another destination that he could go to. The Jets are another destination. Apparently, those are his top 2 on his list. I don't really know why he would want to go to the Jets, but maybe that's because he wants to be in New York. But I just think it's going to be very interesting where he ends up because obviously, as a Colts fan, I told you I would explode if he landed on the Colts. I don't know if they would be interested in trading him inside the division. That's the only thing that sucks about that situation. But I mean, Miami. You look at Miami. I think Miami,
the team I think where he's going. They have the
makes a lot of sense because they can give up a lot of picks. They can give up a young quarterback. I don't know what they view of Tua. You guys all know Jay and I's feeling about Tua, but I mean, hey, they may think he's really good and they may think he's the quarterback of their future. And if they get a couple more draft picks and build around him, then that can be their thing. And the Dolphins obviously look at it. We're in a win now situation. We were, I think, they finished 10-6 or 9-7 last year. Anyways, they were definitely exceeded expectations, definitely myself, but I feel like a lot of people as well. They had a top 5 quarterback in the league. They're right in the thick of things in the AFC.
I believe he's going to Miami. I believe they have the best packages to give up for him with all the draft capital they've accumulated over the past couple of years. They clearly have a good coach. They have a stellar defense, good special teams. They're missing a couple key pieces on offense, and nobody would hide those voids better than Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where he ends up. And the thing I don't know enough about is I do know that Deshaun Watson has a no trade clause. So
he does. I actually didn't know that.
He does. So I believe that
it sounds like he's going to waive it for anybody.
Well, maybe not. Maybe the Texans come to him and are like, hey, we're going to send you to Washington for this, and this. And he's like, I don't really want to go to Washington. So I'll either sit out or you can figure out how to get me to Miami or the Jets. And then they figure out how to do it, because I believe that's what a no trade clause is. It
is you can say no to anywhere
unless he agrees to the trade.
Yeah. So, well, that was Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett tried to get traded. The Timberwolves tried to trade him for years, and he kept saying, no, I'm not going there. And then finally he agreed to go to Boston.
Yeah. So I think he's going to Miami. And if he does, they would still have a few third, fourth, and fifth round draft picks with everything they've gathered. And that's the round you can get young, cheap talent at wide receiver and running back for Deshaun Watson to work with. And he would.
Well, you saw how good their defense was with. I mean, yeah, they have a guy in Byron Jones. It was a first round pick, but I'm not sure anybody else on their defense was a first round pick, or at least a high profile name guy. I mean, Flores did it a lot like Belichick did with that defense. He did a lot of no name guys that just played key roles and did their thing.
Yeah, and I think he could even make it work with the wide receivers that the Dolphins have already. People forget Devontae Parker's a former first-round draft pick.
They've got two good outside receivers.
Preston Williams was a 5-star recruit that just ended up in the wrong spot, who I thought highly of coming out of the draft, who showed flashes last year, but just hasn't picked it up. But I believe that has a little bit to do with the quarterback play. They have speedsters. Jakeem Grant's on that team. Who's the other little fast guy?
I mean, Gesicki's a decent tight end.
Not he's the receiver. Albert Wilson.
No, I'm saying at the tight end position they've got Gesicki. I know he's not a receiver. Yeah, come on. But I'm just saying that he's a decent tight end. I mean, he's a pass catching tight end. Yes, they would probably need to upgrade their running situation because their run game is not that great. But I mean, again, like you said, Deshaun Watson helps every aspect of your offense.
Exactly. So that's my personal opinion where I think he's going.
I think that makes the most sense, and it's the most likely destination.
So do I. I think it's the best for both of them. I think Miami could definitely be a playoff team with Deshaun Watson. They were almost a playoff team this year without him, and they had the Houston would turn around and be able to get the most that any team could offer for him. So it'd be a win-win for both.
Yeah, Houston just needs to full on just blow everything up. I mean, they're in that situation where they're basically in no man's land, and they're at a point of no return where they just got to start over. Really, you said the teams do it way too much, and I completely agree. But Houston is in that situation where they absolutely, I don't think, have any other option.
No, I really don't think they do either, because to me at this point, you're not fixing that relationship.
You've got a disgruntled star quarterback who basically doesn't want to play another down for your team.
Doesn't trust,
and then you just have no talent anywhere else.
Nope. So I think you got to move on. Does this domino affect the quarterback market going forward? Because the quarterback movement in this offseason is about to be the most we've ever seen. So we've already seen one star quarterback change teams. Another average quarterback with Jared Goff change teams. Mm-hmm. Probably going to see more than likely going to see a top 3 quarterback in the NFL change teams, which never happens.
No, it does not. Not at this stage in their career.
There's still a chance Sam Darnold gets cut. There's still a chance that Carson Wentz gets traded. There's still a chance that Dak goes to another team. All this talk when I opened the show saying that this has been a quiet Super Bowl run-up, it's been overshadowed by all the trade talks. And the offseason hasn't even really began yet for the NFL. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens come, March, April.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is going to be a lot of movement because we named all the teams that are in need of a quarterback.
Teddy
And
Bridgewater, I'm hearing, being shopped around. They're looking to
yeah,
trade.
well, Carolina is like, look, I mean, they're a team that absolutely could be in play for Deshaun Watson because with the talent they have offensively, they think that can be their saving grace. And they look at the landscape of their division. I mean, all the quarterbacks in that division are old as dirt. And
Not only that,
Carolina's
Drew
like,
Brees is probably done. Matt
yeah,
Ryan, they're talking about wanting to trade Matt Ryan. So, like,
exactly. He's another one you didn't
quarterbacks.
mention that could be on the move. I mean, he's another guy who's still got probably some years left. I
Steelers
mean,
probably want Big Ben to retire. So, like, what is all this quarterback movement going to do?
yeah. Although he said he'd play for free. That's how bad he wants to play next year. But he's not going to.
No, that's a dumb comment.
There is going to be a lot of quarterback movement. I mean, obviously, as a fan, the only one I care about the most is the Colts because I don't know what they're going to do because I thought Stafford was the move to make for them. And I think the Eagles are going to keep Carson Wentz just because of the money he's owed. But I do think there's going to be a lot of teams that call about Carson. I really do. You mentioned Dak. Yeah, he's a Kirk Cousins. I think the Vikings would love to get off Kirk Cousins' contract.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Even though they just gave him an extension. I don't really think he's Zimmer's guy.
I just saw that the 49ers were interested in Kirk Cousins. So
Mitch Trubisky. I mean, is
another
someone going to believe into those last like 5 games of the regular season that he had and say, oh, I want this guy on my team? I don't know.
There's just going to be so much quarterback. And then on top of that, you got 5 guys coming into the NFL draft that are all projected to go first round. So
There you go.
there's going to be so much quarterback movement this year. Cam Newton, he's probably not going to be the starter in New England. The quarterback movement this offseason is going to be nuts, and I cannot wait to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, we already had the first domino, so we'll see where it goes from there.
Agreed. You want to take this to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and let you start us off here. What are your thoughts?
The Chiefs better win by 45 points.
I don't think they will.
I told you I need it to be a Denver-Seattle type Super Bowl for me to be happy.
I would agree with that.
Because
Tampa Bay being Denver.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Not the other way around. Yeah, Tampa being Denver with the older quarterback on the new team and first Super Bowl appearance with his new team against the young hot shot quarterback because at the time it was Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. Now it's Mahomes with the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs are a much better offensive team than that Seattle team was, but I just see the Chiefs as just too good to lose this game. I really do. I mean, if the Chiefs defense at least can get some stops early, like they did in week, what was that, 10 that they played? I don't even remember what week it was when they played earlier. But, I mean, you saw, I think that they went up like 17-0 in the first quarter. I think Tyreek Hill had like over 200 yards in the first half, which was like an NFL record. And then the Chiefs just took their foot off the gas and didn't really do much in the second half. I think if they come out like that again, they won't take their foot off the gas this time, and just because it's Super Bowl. And I mean, you saw against the Bills, and they played them just how much what the level they were above the Bills, and the Bills were one of the hottest teams in the league coming into that game in the AFC title game. The Chiefs it looked like varsity versus JV in that game. I mean, their offense can score wherever, whenever. Doesn't matter. I mean, they are so explosive in every facet of the game. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I compared this Chiefs team to the Warriors of a couple of years ago, where I think they've just been bored. I said before the season even started, I said Chiefs, Seahawks, Super Bowl. Clearly, I was wrong on the Seahawks, but I said it doesn't
you and I
matter
both
who
picked the
comes
Chiefs
out
to win.
because the Chiefs are going to beat whoever they go against. I believe that from the beginning, even when they, down the stretch, were beating teams by a touchdown, beating a team by 3, beating a team by 5. And people were like, are the Chiefs losing it? And I'm just like, 1, they're still winning every one of these games. And 2, I really, truly just think they were bored. Just like Golden State, after they had won a couple championships, it was like they no longer took the regular season that serious. they could be down by 20 in the third quarter, and all of a sudden Steph and Clay are like, all right, let's start popping some threes. They just knock it down, and they come back from a 20-point deficit in 4 minutes of basketball. Chiefs are the same way. They were down 28 points to Houston last year, I believe, and came back and won. Or maybe
it was 24-0.
Okay, 24, and just turned it on out of nowhere. And I don't think people realize this enough, that Mahomes won his Super Bowl last year, his first one. They're probably going to win this one. And if you remember 2 years ago when he was the full-time starter, Dee Ford jumped off sides on a play that would have sealed the game, and they probably would have won that Super Bowl. So
that's the only playoff game he's ever lost in his career.
So he probably would have had the chance to win 3 straight Super Bowls in his 3 first seasons as being a starter. Because if you remember, he didn't start until he got a start in week 17, I believe, his rookie year.
He basically had a redshirt year.
Exactly. So the 3 full seasons he's played, had Dee Ford not jumped off sides in the first time they played, he probably would have won 3 straight Super Bowls, because I'm already banking he's going to win this one.
Which is another very depressing moment in sports history, when Dee Ford jumped off sides, because that jumping off sides was a great play by Tom Brady, is what history will make it believe it was.
He willed Dee Ford to jump off sides.
He literally just, his presence alone made Dee Ford jump off sides.
That's how good Tom Brady is.
Yeah, and I just saw today, it was the 6-year anniversary of Malcolm Butler's interception. I actually should say Tom Brady actually put on Malcolm Butler's jersey and intercepted that pass and won the game for the Patriots against Seattle 6 years ago.
Saw the audible that Russell called, was like, I know where this is going. Jumped the interception, and that was all Tom Brady.
Don't. If people tell you that's Malcolm Butler, don't believe them, because it was actually Tom Brady that made that play.
Yep. So I just think they credit the wrong guy for the pick.
I mean, I hate talking about this game. I really do. I told you I've been saying the Super Bowl's been canceled for 2 weeks, just because it hurts me how much I don't like this man. And I am a very positive person. I don't like negativity. But there is nothing about him that I respect, like, or admire.
Yeah, I don't know how many times you can be so lucky. And I'm going to open up a fresh wound here. I just want it to be known, how do you not call a pass interference call the whole game in the NFC Championship, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, when Tom, they call it?
Yeah.
It's just, that's the type of shit, and it somewhat made me happy, because we have a good friend that's a Packers fan, and he always defends Brady. And he's like, he's the GOAT. He's not lucky. He gets them to the championship game. That's what he does. And finally, he's like, it was a little weird that they called that at the very end of the game. And I'm like, now you see what I've been saying the whole time. I don't know if the NFL's rigged. I don't know if the refs are on the payroll. But what I'm telling you is, time after time after time after time, the ball always breaks in his favor. Always. So
keep going on that time after time.
Yeah, after time after time.
It's been looped for 20 years.
So that's why I'm so disgusted by it. I truly, and this isn't even me hoping Brady loses. I would put my life savings that the Chiefs beat the Buccaneers. I feel that confident, and trust me, I don't have that much, but I feel very confident that the Chiefs are going to beat the Buccaneers, because I just believe there's no defense in the NFL that can stop this Chiefs team when they want to score. And on top of that, you've given them 2 weeks to figure out what Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and all these guys are going to do to you when they get on the field. So the thing with the Buccaneers is, they run a lot of cover 0, cover 1, blitz, and that is not going to work when you got the speed that the Kansas City.
That's dangerous against this Chiefs team. They saw it in whatever week they played earlier in the season, and like I said, the Chiefs just kind of stopped playing in the second half. I mean, you said I believe the Chiefs would win too. I just think they're the better team. From the beginning of the season, I just thought they were the best team in the league. I mean, both of us picked the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl and win. I mean, I never really faltered on that at all. I mean, yes, there were teams that I thought could play competitively in the playoffs, and they did. I mean, they showed that
I never pick a team to win back-to-back, because it's so rare that it happens. And I was that confident seeing that Chiefs team that they were going to repeat, because there's just nothing that anybody's going to do to stop them. That offense
No.
is unbelievable.
And I mean, I've seen a lot of talk today about Mahomes. If he beats Brady in the Super Bowl, he's on the path to being the GOAT. But if he loses, he can never be the GOAT.
Well, I saw what their reasoning is if Mahomes wins, he now has 2, and there's a very good possibility he could get to 6. But if he loses, that would give Brady 7, and it'd be 7-1, and it'd be very hard, which is a good argument.
I guess that makes more sense, I guess, if you put it that way.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it like that. That's true. But, yeah, I mean, go Chiefs.
I agree. Let's go.
Go Chiefs.
Patrick Mahomes. Well, let's get your NBA kick right here.
But,
Nick is the NBA guy. I am not. I like the NBA, but Nick fiends. Nick loves the NBA.
I do. I watch the NBA every night. I was just telling Jay, actually, I don't know if League Pass was having like a promo or something, but miraculously, I don't pay for it at all. I know because
I'm pissed because I looked and I don't have it.
I have League Pass for free right now. No idea how I got it. So I've been able to watch like any game I want for like weeks now. It's been fucking awesome. I don't know what happened.
I don't either, but I'm a little jealous. So what I was going to say was, if you're listening to this, remember the name of the podcast. It's Unwanted Opinions. If you're going to listen to an opinion on the NBA, I would definitely listen to his over mine. But I'm still going to give you what I think based off of what I've seen so far.
There you go. All right, Jay. I don't know if you saw. Okay, you probably didn't watch the game last night, but did you see the way the Nets lost?
Yes, I did. With Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal.
Is like the crazy. They were down 5 with under 12 seconds to go and lost by 3. How the fuck does that happen?
Yeah.
They gave up 149 points.
And that's
to the Wizards.
That's been the story of the Nets since before James Harden got there, everyone was questioning their defense.
They don't guard anybody.
No one's questioned whether they can score the ball before James Harden got there or even after. I saw today, since the James Harden trade, they're on pace to be statistically the best offense we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, statistically, the worst defense we've ever seen in the entire NBA.
The worst.
Yes.
How can you be the worst defense ever and expect to win a championship?
And that is
it's
why
not even like a middle of the pack defense where your offense can bring it up. I mean, it's the worst ever.
Yep, and it's embarrassing. None of them play defense. They
basically are playing 5 players.
Yes. And
they only really have 5 guys to play because they traded away their entire team for James Harden.
And one of those guys that they're really depending on is DeAndre Jordan. That's not a good thing. Yeah. And at this point in his career, maybe if this was 8 years ago, but not now.
And I think Kevin Durant looks fantastic offensively after his Achilles tear. I mean, I didn't expect him to be this good this quickly. Offensively, that is. Defensively, he just doesn't care, really. Throughout his career, I would never say he's been sought out as a guy that, we're going to try and get this guy to pick and roll and attack him. But he's never really been a plus defender, aside from those 3 years with the Warriors where he actually legitimately cared about defense. And I think that was also because he had Steph and Draymond and Iguodala, who also were really, really good defenders, 3 of the best defenders in the league at the time. So I think that made him buy in a little bit more. But now that he's on the Nets, Kyrie doesn't care about defense, and he's not a good defender when he tries. Same thing with Harden. Harden's even worse than Kyrie, in my opinion. All they want to do is just shoot. They basically stand around on defense and wait and hope the other team misses because they really don't try.
No.
And Joe Harris is not a good defender at this stage in his career.
Are you worried about Joe Harris defensively?
I mean, he can't defend anybody either, but he's maybe not the worst one. DeAndre Jordan, like you said, he barely can move anymore, and Jeff Green has never been known as a defender. So I don't know who they think they're going to stop in a playoff series if their shot's not falling.
The problem is, I think their offense is so good that it's going to get them to the championship, and then I think they get beat by one of them.
I don't think they can make it out of the East with as bad as their defense is.
I just look at matchups. Who is going to take them out?
Okay, I really think Philly is a really good matchup for them, and Embiid will absolutely destroy them. If you watch when the Sixers just played the Lakers a couple nights ago. I mean, you saw Embiid. He absolutely torched Anthony Davis and Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell. And now I'm not saying Harrell's not a very good defender, but at this stage of his career, Gasol's not what he used to be, but he's still a plus defender guarding centers. And AD is one of the best defensive centers in the league. And I mean, Embiid just toyed with them basically the entire game. I mean, Embiid is absolutely going to, if he stays in the mind that he's playing right now, because what Embiid's doing, and healthy for sure, because what Embiid's doing right now, this is what everybody has wanted from Embiid his entire career, and he's finally doing it. I think it has a lot to do, we're going on a whole Sixers rant, but I think it has a lot to do with Doc Rivers, because Doc Rivers may not be like the best tactician as a coach, but I think he's a very good leader, and I think he's a guy that people like to play for, especially now after he was like he basically got blamed for that loss that the Clippers had last year in the bubble. I mean, they didn't blame Kawhi or Paul George. All the blame went to Doc Rivers miraculously. So I think that obviously really pisses him off. So he's like, look, I'm going to do it then in Philly. I mean, we're going to be good. We're a good defensive team. We've got one of the best players in the league, and he's playing at an MVP level. I mean, I also think Milwaukee hung with them a couple nights ago offensively, and defensively, it's just when they need to get stops and their shots not falling, but Brooklyn just can't do it. I really don't think they will win the East with as bad as their defense is unless they improve.
Well, I think Milwaukee's worse this year than last year. I think that the blueprint's been written.
I think Milwaukee will be better come the playoffs. I really do.
I think they'll be better than what they're playing now.
I think they're trying a lot of stuff out in the regular season, and they're still trying to find what works.
And I agree with you. I don't think they're an 11-8 team. When the playoffs roll around, you're not going to be thinking Milwaukee's a barely above 500 team. They'll be better than that. But what I'm saying is I think the blueprint's already been written on how to beat Milwaukee in the playoffs. I don't think they've done anything really to get to make me believe that it's going to be different this year. I think Brooklyn can hang too many points on Milwaukee that Milwaukee can't match. And I was going to say that Philly is the only team matchup-wise that I look at and I'm like, that could be an issue because of the big down low.
Sure.
The problem is Embiid does get in a different mindset when it comes playoff time. We've seen in the past. I'm not saying that he won't do that this year. He also has a past injury history.
Yes, he does.
He also doesn't take full advantage of his size down low like I believe he should. He's still shooting the three a lot. He likes to play like he's a guard at some point.
He does. He really does.
If he would just start in the block and get his touches there and then use that and use his shooting and his quickness for a big as like a byproduct of them being scared of him down low, I think he'd be even more scary than he is right now because I saw that he's like 25th in touches in the paint. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, he loves the ball at the elbow.
And that's what I'm saying.
He loves it there. He loves to work there because he uses
easier to defend if you're Brooklyn without size.
But you also have to think about it. I mean, it's about a quarter through the regular season right now. If, say, Brooklyn and Philly do match up in a 7-game series, I mean, first of all, unless Brooklyn gets like a big in the buyout market or they trade, I think they will, but I don't know who it's going to be. And I don't really know if it's
Rob Parker say something about the Cavs might dump on or.
There is no way the Cavs are buying out Andre Drummond. I've seen that all over Twitter.
That's what Rob Parker came up with. I don't know.
Well, he's a fucking idiot. He hates LeBron, so he thinks that the Nets have the best chance to win. So he thinks they're just going to be gifted Andre Drummond. The Cavs aren't just going to give away Andre Drummond. He's having a good season for him, and he's an asset. They're not just going to give this guy away for nothing.
I've also seen Kevin Love, and I'm like, what does that fix?
It would make their defense worse.
That's what I said. What does that fix for you? Joe Harris is better and would play the same role.
First of all, they would have to trade either KD or Kyrie or Harden to match salaries.
Now I've been saying I think they should trade Kyrie. I think they'd be a better team if they traded Kyrie. But
we've been saying that for a while. And
they're not going to.
No, they won't because that's KD's best friend and KD's their guy and they want to keep him happy. They don't want to trade away him. But my point was, if they get into a 7-game series with the Sixers, you've got to, first of all, you have to guard Embiid for 7 straight games. if you get DeAndre Jordan in foul trouble in the first quarter, which, by the way, the refs are blowing their whistle for Embiid this year, he's going to get him into foul trouble within the first 6 minutes of the game. So then your best hope is putting Kevin Durant on him. I mean, KD can't guard Embiid or Jeff Green or Harden. I don't know who they're going to try and guard him.
That's why I did say that I think the Sixers proposed the best matchup
and Ben Simmons' length defensively to guard Kevin Durant. Also, I mean, the Sixers to me look like the best team.
What if the Nets decide to attack the basket and get Embiid into foul trouble early? They will have no answer for the Brooklyn.
True,
offense.
Very true.
So I don't know.
I'm just saying, I think they pose a good matchup, and like I said, unless the Brooklyn's defense gets any better, I just don't think they can come out of the East. I've just seen
this so many times from the Sixers, man. They have all this star power, and they're going to be great come the postseason. And
they have to string it together. They've got to keep it up. They do. They really do, because they were another team I wanted to talk about because I really like what they're doing this year, and I'm glad we got to them. But I just think they have heard for a while all this stuff, and now they actually, like I said, have a coach who can tell them what has actual experience with doing this. And I also think Embiid, first of all, I heard a story about Embiid actually over the offseason when he didn't make All-NBA and Rudy Gobert made third-team All-NBA over Joel Embiid. He was in the delivery room with his fiance, saw his phone that said he didn't make it, and was just pissed off immediately. He was about to have his firstborn child, looked at his phone, saw he didn't make All-NBA, and got pissed off.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I think you have so far seen a different Joel Embiid this year. And I think Ben Simmons is very motivated because he was in all those Harden trade talks. I mean, Tobias Harris, he's having a much better year than he did last year. They just look like they fit better this year. So
I agree with that.
I just haven't been sold on Brooklyn this whole time. And I don't offensively, obviously they're a massive juggernaut. But like I said, in the playoffs when they need a stop, they just can't get it.
Well, I just think for as much as everybody says, like I heard Kendrick Perkins the other day say, the East is not bad anymore. The East is just as good as the West, and I don't believe that. So I think the top teams in the West will beat any of the teams in the East in a 7-game series. That's why, even though I'm picking the Nets to come out of the East and make it to the championship series, I'm taking whatever West team finds their way to play them, whether it be the Clippers or the Lakers. So
yeah.
You want to go?
I do think those are the two teams out of the West that I've been impressed with the Clippers this year. I think I don't know if they have everything to. I still think the Lakers are the best team in the league. I really do. I actually think the Lakers have taken this season a lot more seriously than I thought they were going to from the start. I mean, you see LeBron out here. He dropped 46 against the Cavs the other night. I mean, he was. 34, 6, and 6
was getting at
he was a guy in the Cavs front office, and he was standing up clapping. LeBron made a shot, and then he outscored the Cavs by himself in the fourth quarter. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think he's taken this season a lot more serious than he actually is. And I mean, maybe he's trying to go for that 5th MVP and just show everybody. But I mean, I didn't really want to talk about the Lakers because my opinion really hasn't changed much on them. Like I said, I really like their depth. Their depth is so much better now this year than it was last year. The additions of Harrell and Schroeder and Wes Matthews, and I think Kuzma's actually well, I guess we're kind of talking about him now. I actually think Kuzma is playing smarter than he ever has because I think he's actually realizing what his role is, and he's not trying to do too much. So I think that's helped him. It's just Anthony Davis needs to get back into the groove offensively. And I think he will, but just offensively, he's not where he was last year, especially at the end of the playoffs.
All right, so what about the Clippers? You were starting to say you like what they're doing this year.
I mean, you see what the Clippers are doing. I think Paul George and Kawhi are both shooting 50, 40, and 90 from the field, the three, and from the free throw line. I mean, that's damn impressive. I think they're both averaging like 25, 6, and 6 around that. It's just their top two guys are obviously – it's duos really outside of the Nets who have a big three, if you want to call it that. But it's a lot of duos in the NBA right now. And their top two guys, Paul George and Kawhi, are as good as anybody. It's just, I mean, I can never buy into a team where Paul George is your second best player come the playoffs. I've seen it way too many times. If he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But I'm going to go to my grave where I've seen him fall in the playoffs whether he was on the Pacers, the Thunder, last year in the bubble when he hit the side of the backboard in the Game 7. I mean, and the Clippers still have a lot of the same problems they did last year. I mean, they don't have a guy who's a good facilitator, and I saw they would love to get their hands on Bradley Beal. They have absolutely nobody who Washington would want for Bradley Beal because Washington is not taking Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams, and they have no picks because they traded them all away for Paul George. So I do think the Clippers are a very good team. I just don't think they can compete with the Lakers in the playoffs. I really don't.
And a big reason is kind of what you just touched on was we've seen what happens when Paul George gets into the playoffs. So until proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that. And I believe the Clippers are a better regular season team this year than last year because of the fact that they're going more offensively through Paul George and letting Kawhi play more on defense and doing it that way. And the problem is that's going to work now when he doesn't have the pressure on him, and come playoffs when you're relying on Paul George to be that number one offensive option, he's probably going to falter more times than not. And
I think they're taking the regular season more serious because of all the shit that came out after last year where there were so many reports where they just let Kawhi and PG take off games whenever they wanted. They didn't really practice. There was all this shit. So they got slandered for a lot of, right reasons they did, but I think they're trying to prove a point. And I don't know. I mean, we've seen Kawhi break down at the end of almost every season since he had that horrific leg injury with San Antonio. I mean, in the Raptors, when they won the title that year, he was breaking down at the end of the finals. I mean, you saw it last year. I think you saw it in the bubble where he didn't look as explosive as he did at the beginning of the season. And he's playing in back-to-backs this year, which is a big deal for Kawhi because he hadn't done that in like 3 years. So we'll see how his body holds up. So that's a real concern as well.
Yeah, so those are the only 4 teams I really feel confident that'll have a chance to make it to the championship and win it. 2 out of the East, 2 out of the West. Do you think Denver or Utah has a legitimate shot to come out of the West?
Like I said, I don't.
Okay. Do you think either one of them have a legitimate shot to make it to the Western Conference Finals?
I do, actually. I think Utah and Denver both have a legit chance to play the Lakers. And I think come the right matchup, I do think they could beat the Clippers. I really do, because again, you saw what the Nuggets were able to do to the Clippers last year with Jokic. I mean, they still have nobody to defend Jokic. They really don't. But the Nuggets, they got off to a really slow start at the beginning of the season. Michael Porter Jr. was missing a lot of games because of COVID. I mean, he's a young idiot, and so I don't really think he's taking any of the protocols very seriously because he missed basically a month. Now he's back. I mean, he's playing really well. Jokic, I think he just had like 47, 11, and 5 against Rudy Gobert yesterday. Yeah. He looked unbelievable. Jamal Murray, after his slow starts, playing a lot better. So I think the Nuggets are starting to click now. They're kind of typically slow starters anyways, the Nuggets are, but I really like the matchup that the Nuggets have against the Clippers. I really do. Yes. And this year with Utah, it's big that they got Bogdanovich back because they didn't have him last year in the bubble. I mean, he was the guy that averaged 20 for him. I think Mike Conley's a lot more comfortable in the offense now.
And this is the Conley that I thought they were going to get when they initially made the trade.
Yeah, I think they just had, before they lost to Utah or Denver last night, they were just on like a 10 or 11 game win streak. They were
I think they were 11
in the West. I mean, and Donovan Mitchell, I think, has evolved his game where he's not just looking to score every single time. I think he's also just buying into the offense that Quinn Snyder has there. I also think Rudy Gobert, I mean, he's always going to be one of the best defensive players in the league, but I think he's also just stopped trying to post up 100 times on offense and think he deserves the ball offensively because that's just not how they're going to succeed. So, and Jordan Clarkson right now off the bench for Utah is like the 6th man of the year so far. I mean, you
could argue he's the best player on that team right now.
He's been really good for him. So
I think he has the top PER on the team.
Yeah, I think he's actually been really good, and that's a guy who, I mean, he was a guy that the Lakers didn't see as
cast off.
Yeah, the same thing as the Cavs. I mean, the Cavs just shipped him out for who was it? I think it was Dante Exum, who had barely played in his career at all. So the Cavs basically just gave him away for nothing. So those are those 2 teams I really do think could have a legit shot at the Western Conference Finals. And don't sleep on the Suns.
I just don't see it yet. They got some good young talent, but I don't see them being able to overcome any of the 4 teams you just talked about in the West.
Not even with CP, the point guard?
No.
They're young.
I will say that I like this Suns team roster better than I like the Thunder roster that CP was doing this with. But
I agree with that. Well, I mean, Booker's better than any other second player that the Thunder had last year, for sure. No question about it.
DeAndre Ayton down low. They got some young pieces, but I mean, I've been saying for 4 years now that they're going to be this young team that finally takes the next step, and they just don't do it year after year. So,
all right, speaking of young teams that take the next step, Jay, what's wrong with your Mavs?
I don't know.
You had high hopes for the Mavericks this year.
100%.
I think as a lot of people did, because, I mean, you saw what Luka did last year in the playoffs, and they were getting Porzingis back, and they got Josh Richardson, and I don't know what the problem is. They can't defend anybody.
Luka fucking forgot how to shoot a 3. I'll tell you that.
He can't shoot for shit.
All of a sudden, just goes to a shit shooter. When I was basing this off of last year, where he was hitting step backs over anybody that was in front of him. I don't know what happened. I'm not ready to write him off just yet. I mean, the bottom of the playoff bracket in the West is all really close right now, and
it's very jumbled right now.
So we still have a long way to go, and they could still come back and make a run at it, but I'm not confident right now.
They have not been very impressive so far. And I told you, I know you were saying you thought they could be one of the better teams in the West. I was just worried because of Porzingis' health. I didn't think they would be this bad, but I just thought with Porzingis missing a lot of games to start the year, and I really don't know if he's ever actually going to play at all. I mean, he might unfortunately have another knee issue because you kind of worry about those tall, lanky guys that just their bodies. I don't know. It's just there's weird things about tall, skinny, big guys.
Yeah, because a human being's not supposed to be 7 foot tall, Nick. You're not fucking supposed to be that big, so your knee joints are not supposed to be carrying all that weight.
They're just different.
And on top of that, you're bouncing off of them every day as a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
They just break down.
So, yeah, I mean, they're another team that's been very disappointing. Your Pelicans also, Jay. You had high hopes for your Pellies, and oh my God, are they bad?
Hey, I started this segment off by saying that I was not the NBA guy. So when you heard my opinion on the Pelicans, you should have took it with a grain of salt and picked against them, because I don't know what the hell happened.
And I told you when we talked about this, like when the season started, when I told you, first of all, Zion is not the 19th best player in the league. Clearly, I mean, I just thought that was a slap to the face to a lot of the other good players in the league. I told you he's not even the best player on his own team. Brandon Ingram is a better player currently, right now, as constructed. Zion may ascend to being a better player than Brandon Ingram, but currently he's not. And that roster just made absolutely zero sense to me. They have zero shooting, and they have no spacing on the floor. I mean, Steven Adams and Zion playing together makes no sense. I mean, Lonzo's not a good shooter. Eric Bledsoe's not a good shooter. JJ Redick isn't even playing right now. First of all, he's playing terribly, and he's kind of been cut out of the rotation. So they're a team that is – I just don't understand that team. I don't get them, and they're just not very good. I told you I'd be more impressed with Zion if he led this team to the playoffs. There's a shot.
It's a low chance.
But
there's a shot.
Slim chance.
You ready to give Steph Curry some props? He has this.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's awesome.
9. So if we're just going to be calling my bullshit, I want to call your bullshit that you thought that he wouldn't be able to do this.
I told you. I said I thought there was a lot of pressure on Steph to make the playoffs because, I mean, he's been on a lot of teams that have had a lot of good players on him throughout his career, and I said
you didn't think he'd be able to do this, and I know it's still early, but he has them in the playoff hunt right now at 11-9.
And they've had some impressive wins. They came back from like 20 to beat the Clippers not that long ago. They did this. They came back from like 16 to beat the Lakers a few nights after that. So I mean, first of all, he's a lot of fun to watch. I love watching Steph Curry. I used to really like him in Davidson, and then in the NBA, and then the whole KD situation made me really dislike the Warriors for a long time. But I'm back to liking watching Steph play. I think it's fun. He's awesome. His range is unlimited. And
best shooter the game's ever seen, bar none.
No question about it. I mean, it's awesome to watch. But hey, I mean, if he, especially in the Western Conference, man, if he gets in the playoffs, that's
And then
important.
Clay comes back. Is there a possibility that he could come back at the end of the year if they make the playoffs, or
I
is he already
don't.
ruled
I mean,
out?
that Achilles injury, there's no way they would probably test that. I doubt it.
Yeah,
I
you're probably
really, really
right.
doubt it. I don't think they would. I mean, just the short turnaround, that's a lot to ask of anybody. So
And Dame's shout out to Portland. Dame's balling out, but they're just not that
they're
impressive.
another team that, I mean, CJ McCollum was having like a career year. He was looking like he was going to make an all-star team, and then he like broke, I think he has a stress fracture in his foot, so he's been out for a while. So, I mean, Dame just hit an incredible game winner against the Bulls the other night. I mean, I think they were down 5 with like 12 seconds left, and they won 2. So I don't. Apparently, that's like the thing now. If you're down 5 with like under 10 seconds, you're going to win.
Yeah,
that's like the magical number to be down. So, all right, Jay. Before we get out of here, I want to give you my Bradley Beal trades because I don't know.
Hit me with.
I know they won last night, but there was a moment in the first quarter where during a timeout, he was sitting on the scores table.
Yeah,
and
he's
his team
kind
was
of
huddled up.
a crybaby a little bit.
Which I'm not really sure why everyone is siding with Bradley Beal because the Wizards suck, because he's a tremendous player, but he chose to resign there long term.
Correct.
And now everybody is mad at the Wizards for not being good and losing with him on the team. I just don't understand that. Why? That makes no sense to me.
It's not like they're not trying to do shit. They went out and got Russell Westbrook, who has shown flashes of being really fucking good at times. So
Bradley Beal doesn't care about defense, and neither does anybody on that team. They don't defend anybody.
And I saw highlights of this dude walking off the court that game you're talking about.
Yeah.
Teammates trying to give him a high five or a low five or whatever you want to call it, and him just brushing by him, not even slapping.
Yeah, he's got some bad body language when they were losing, and then when they win, he's happy. So
yeah, I'm not on that side. I'll never agree with that.
I don't know.
You don't have to like the organization. You don't have to like the coach, but be there for your teammates. And if they're trying to give you a high five and pump you up, that shit.
And you picked to sign the contract for the money. I mean,
you want to be like Dame and stick up for your city and be like, I want to bring a championship here. Then fucking ride the lows, because the NBA there's no other league in the world that has as much player empowerment as the NBA, where you can basically do whatever the hell you want to do and go wherever the hell you want to go. James Harden, a la when he basically forced his way out of Houston, you can do what you want to do no matter how you want to get there. And he chose to stay. So suck it up. Let me hear your trades.
I agree. All right. So I've got 4 that I think are pretty realistic, because I saw that the Lakers and the Clippers, like I mentioned, would love to get into the Bradley Beal trade. I just don't think they have the picks because of what the Lakers gave up for AD and what the Clippers gave up for Paul George. So the teams I think that make the most sense, the first one I've got for you, Jay, is the Pelicans, actually, because this would get the Pelicans a lot more shooting. They have picks out the wazoo, and they've got some decent young players that could maybe entice the Wizards. So the Pelicans get Bradley Beal. The Wizards would get, they got to take Eric Bledsoe's contract to make the money work for Bradley Beal. Then they get Lonzo, because he's apparently being shopped right now by the Pelicans. And you either take your pick between Jackson Hayes or Josh Hart, and then you ask for as many picks as the NBA will allow you to trade, because the Pelicans have all the Lakers picks. They have a lot of the Bucks picks from the AD trade and the Drew Holiday trade. So you get there, you try and rebuild a little bit. You still have, I don't know, Russell Westbrook and a couple other guys.
I like that a lot for both teams. And
I mean, that would really help the Pelicans, because, like I said, you get a ton of shooting from Bradley Beal, and you get another guy who can create offensively, and then let Brandon Ingram and Zion do their thing with space. Okay, so the Nuggets, this one has been floating around for a long time, but the Nuggets get Brad Beal, the Wizards get Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and picks. Now, I don't know if the Nuggets are willing to give up Michael Porter Jr. because he's a guy that basically they've said is untouchable, but that's probably what the Nuggets would have to do to get their hands on a guy like Bradley Beal. And if they think they can win the title in the next couple of years, Bradley Beal definitely helps their cause. So that's another one that makes a lot of sense. The Heat have basically, it's Tyler Hero. It's a package centered around Tyler Hero and Iguodala and Olynyk to make the money work, and then picks. And that's what you got to do if whatever the Wizards think of Hero I know I think I think Twitter thinks he's better than he actually is. I think he's a good player, but I think everyone thinks he's basically Ray Allen in his prime. But hey, the Wizards may think he's a guy that he's a young player that they could have for the next 7-8 years at least to keep under contract and then get picks from the Heat. And then the last one I've got is it's kind of a one out there. It's for the Mavericks. They just straight up trade Porzingis and then some picks to go get Bradley Beal. Pair Brad Beal with Luka. You actually get a second guy who you can count on. And you just probably try to do what the Nets do and just outscore everybody with Luka and Brad Beal.
I don't think they would do that because
I don't think the Wizards would do it.
Healthy. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm going to rule that one out. I think the best one for the Wizards would be the Nuggets trade that you proposed.
Because of the Porter Jr. aspect?
Yes. And Gary Harris. And I think the one that I would be most interested to watch would be the Pelicans.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I could see the Denver or the New Orleans trade happening because I think they both benefit the Wizards and you get a decent amount in return for Bradley Beal. I just don't know if the Wizards want to move off of him.
I know, and that's the thing. It's just I know that he's like the next star who may request a trade, or he's been in a lot of trade talks recently because how bad the Wizards are, and maybe they turn around. Maybe now Russell Westbrook says he's finally healthy again because he said he was basically playing on one leg. So maybe they turn it around and end up making the playoffs, and he becomes a little more happy. I don't know, but that's I just was having some fun today and throwing it into the trade machine.
Which would be your favorite for both?
I think the
Which
Nuggets
one's the most realistic?
The Pelicans, because of all the picks that they have, because I think that would entice the Wizards the most is the picks and the decent. I mean, Lonzo's a good player, and Jackson Hayes or Josh Hart are decent players as well, and you get a lot of picks, and maybe you eventually hit on one, and they become a good trio in the East, or I don't know, but I think the one I would like to see the most is the Nuggets, because I would like to see Brad Beal with Jokic and Jamal Murray and see if they can become a legitimate threat to the Lakers in the West, because that would absolutely 100%, in my opinion, put them over the Clippers, and that would put them really, really close to the Lakers.
Yeah, if that happened, I'd be close to – I for sure would say that they are no doubt a contender to make the championship game.
That is a dangerous team.
I don't know if I'd be willing to put them over the Lakers.
That's what I'm saying. I think they'd be closer.
But I'll tell you this, if they beat the Lakers in the 7th,
and they'd be an injury away from the Lakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's an injury to LeBron or AD away from going to the finals. So, hey, and I mean, he's still only, I think he's 27 or 28. I mean, he's still young, and Murray and Jokic are young, and you get those three trio for a while. I mean, LeBron can't play forever. I mean,
and he'd be able to play off the ball more and not be.
I mean, LeBron's like Iron Man, but the dude, he's going to eventually retire.
Yeah.
So
that's a nice little fun thing you had for me.
It was just fun to do for me. So we can get out of here on that. Yeah. You know where to find us. Just listen to the beginning of the pod. You subscribe, rate, review, wherever. So.
All right.
All right, Joe.
Until next time.
Until next time.